Good day, YouTube and Linux Action Show subreddit. I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to install the Elder Scrolls Online, and then I'm going to review its performance on Linux Mint. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to need you to have to do this is going to be Play on Linux. Now, there's a lot of tutorials already out there on how to use Wine and Play on Linux, so I'm not going to go through that. I'm just going to assume that you have at least a basic understanding of it. Now, before I even buy a game, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look it up on Wine Headquarters app database. So I'm just going to open up whatever search engine I prefer. I'm going to type in the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm going to type in Wine HQ. Okay, it's the first one in my case. When they have multiple versions like this, and you'll see there's a lot more comments on some of these old ones, I would open up all of them. So I'm going to open up all these guys. So why am I opening up all of them? This game is a recent release. It's only like, I don't know, 2 weeks old. So this release version might not have as many useful comments. If there were a lot more comments or one of these was massively outdated, then I would not pay attention to the older ones. I'm going to go through, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see how they rate it. So silver and above is basically it runs well enough that you might want to purchase it. Gold and platinum are their best ratings, and platinum means flawless, including install for the most part. And I'll tell you how I rank them later. And gold plays near perfectly. You'll probably have about as many problems on Windows as you will on Linux if it's gold. Now you notice there's a couple garbage ones, so you might want to stop and think, why are they garbage? Now you notice this guy is running a slightly older version of Wine. That might be the problem. I don't actually think it is in this case. I think these two individuals are missing the certificate. They didn't work around their certificate problem. I'll tell you about that in a second, how to do that. It is, in my opinion, I would give it a gold, very, very close to platinum, and I'll tell you why it doesn't get gold in a little while. But the first thing you need to know is there is a certificate problem, and you do have to work around it right at the beginning. And he tells you why he gives it a silver. I know why he might be crashing, so it's not a huge deal. We'll deal with that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a wine bottle or a wine prefix or virtual drive, however you want to think about this. It's technically not some of the things I said it was, but I've heard people refer to it as anything when you're dealing with the Play on Linux. You create this new virtual drive, and you're going to pick a type of wine to use in that virtual drive. So what does this inform us on which one we'd want to use? Now you'll see the older ones have slightly lower ratings. The newest ones have the highest ratings. So when I go to pick my wine version, I'm going to pick the newest one. I'm not going to go into why necessarily, but I'm going to pick a 32-bit Windows installation. There's a couple of reasons for that. And I'm going to pick the digital download variant. I'm choosing to review that one because that's the way most people install their games nowadays. I understand that some of you have slower internet connections and computers and really can't deal with downloading a game as big as this, and this is a big game. It's over 20 gigabytes. It's probably close to 30. But there are extra steps associated with installing it from the CD, and that is because you still can, because that's the way I installed my first prefix. Because I do have a slow internet connection. If you notice when you buy the game, most of the hard copies are Mac and PC, and so you have to deal with stuff like Adobe Air installations as extra steps, and I don't have to deal with it. So 1/7/16 is what I'm going to make mine, and I'm going to make mine a 32-bit version. You'll see I already have it installed as the Elder Scrolls Online, so I'm going to make it just SO, just Elder Scrolls Online. I'm going to hit next. Poof. So it's going to create this virtual drive. a drink here. And I'm going to go to that virtual drive. And I'm going to install components right off the bat. Now, it's kind of cheating. None of these people have told you that you need these components. I'll tell you how I knew that I needed these components before ever finishing the installation the first time. But I'm going to do something they don't recommend, and I'm going to install the DirectX full setup. So here you go, I'm installing the DirectX full setup. Shouldn't take that long because I do have that already installed. Now note, since I have the DirectX full setup set up on most of these guys, I obviously have 3 or 4 times the bloat that it would normally create. I'm also going to install VC Run 2010. So I'll tell you why I knew it needed the VC Run 2010 runtime as well. And it'll be pretty obvious in a little while. But I also have that downloaded. It'll install quickly. It might take a couple of seconds for you guys to download them, especially the DirectX. I think it's over 100 megabytes. And I'm going to choose OpenGL for my direct raw render instead of GDI. And you'll see if you pick this one, he recommends that right there, that you change it to OpenGL in a file it's going to create in a little while. And the reason it has OpenGL as an option is because it's a Mac game also, and Macs use OpenGL. So we might as well use it because we get a lot better performance if you can switch that from, GDI and D3, D9 is what it would probably default out to, or DirectX 9 to OpenGL. I'm also going to do some things that you wouldn't know about right away. Some computers, and this is going to be very dependent on whether you are running a Radeon or, like me, an NVIDIA, I'm going to disable GLSL support. If you choose to do this and you get weird shadows, turn this back on. Now, strict draw ordering, I believe, is disabled by default. So if you hit default, it'll automatically choose disabled. I'm going to disable it by choice. If you get little red squares that have missing textures, go back and enable it. Okay, and the default for this is enabled, but I will show you that I'll enable it as well. And I have 2 gigs of video memory on my NVIDIA card, so I'm going to switch to 2 gigs. So I've set up the entire drive. One of the things I might do is open up this guy, see what version of Windows I'm running. And in this case, I'm actually going to switch it up to 7. You may want to change how the graphics, like some people emulate virtual desktop, stuff like that. I'm not going to, so I'm just going to hit apply. I'm going to fix the registry problem right up. But if you tried to install it without changing the registry within the Windows partition that it creates, you would get an error right towards the end of the installation. And you do that by opening a shell. Now this isn't very specific, it just says the wine control panel, but the command is after you open a shell, and make sure you have ESO highlighted when you do this, is just wine control. Okay, it says I need wine gecko for the version of wine I'm running. I'll install that. It takes a couple seconds. Proving that my internet connection is nice and slow. Probably even slower than normal. It's probably because I'm in peak time right here. Look at that. So it's crawling by. So after I get that gecko installed, something will pop up. It'll be the wine control panel. And I am going to use this certificate, which I've already downloaded in this gentleman here, Patrick Martin, call out to him, has provided the certificate that I'll need to use to override. This is a security thing, so you might not feel comfortable overriding the certificate. Just know that it probably won't work unless you do, so don't buy it if you're not comfortable with that. So I'm going to open up internet settings. I'm going to go to content. I'm going to bring in that certificate, and I'm just going to browse my computer. Now there's my virtual drive, ESO, in my wine prefixes on my Play on Linux drive. I'm going to go all the way out to my home drive. It's in my downloads, and I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to hit next. Automatically select certificate store. I'm going to click next. I'm going to hit finish. It was successful. Poof. If you choose not to do that and you go through and you get the certificate error, this is what it needs you to do. If you have further connection problems or further significant certificate flags, you may have to do it at an OS level. Here is where it says to do that in the closed beta section. I highly recommend not doing that unless you still have problems. I'm going to close this out now that I fixed that problem, and I'm going to go ahead and run another executable in this drive. Or sorry, I haven't run one yet, but I will run an executable in this drive. I've already signed up, paid my money, and downloaded the digital installer for PC. I'm not going to show you how to do that because I don't want to put in my information in front of everybody, and obviously I went through the buying portion of it. So I've got that executable, and I'm just going to click on it. Right? So you see right now it's running well already. I'm going to click OK. It's going to give me some videos and then probably a EULA, or maybe the EULA before the videos, who knows. Videos first, right? You see a little white border here, maybe, depending on what your setup is. That is because the game is not full screened at that point. It's just guessing and filling in the space. You should always read your end user license agreements, especially for these MMOs. Realize that usually they tell you have no rights. In this case, this one's actually not that bad. I'm going to go ahead and say I've read it. The ones for EA are pretty bad, so I guess Bethesda is just a less soul stealing company. This is how I knew I needed that DirectX and VC runtimes right here. Using Play on Linux to install them is more reliable, and so right when I saw that, I closed out all these and went back there and installed them that way. I don't need this shortcut. It's not going to put it on this desktop anyway. It's going to put it on some imaginary desktop or the virtual desktop, which you could force to come out. But I've not got it set up that way. So you'll see it's downloading something slowly because my computer, like I said, my internet connection is kind of slow. You might get a crash report at this point that pops out because it's ran from one executable to the next. If you do, just close it out. It means nothing. It looks like it's hanging. It's not. Again, that's just because my internet connection's slow. And it's just I live in a rural area, so I don't get the best options there. So you can see it's no longer hanging. Let's go ahead and it's downloading. After I'm done downloading it and show you that indeed the installer will get to a point where it needs to download the bulk of the game, I will switch to just showing you the little tweaks I would do and where you would find them. Because obviously, I'm not going to wait for the 22, I think it's a 22 gigabyte game, maybe it's a 28 gigabyte game, to install over my internet. But I have installed it on other people's PCs, people that have quicker connections. So you'd click install. Oh, oh look, I don't have enough. I don't have enough disk space. That's because my drives are located on my solid state for my games, and the last Elder Scrolls Online took up too much space. So we'll just close that out. So it does work. So I'll just show you that it is installed already and that the install button does come up, and then I'll skip through the next because I don't want to put in my password on something I'm going to post on YouTube. So there that is. Um, Now, I got through this. I started playing and I was ending up with frequent crashes. And I was saying, oh, well, why am I getting crashes? So I went back to Wine HQ. And specifically, I wasn't just getting crashes, I was getting freezes. Now, note the wordage because in the closed beta, it made it real easy for me to find uh, my help thread. So this is a certificate crash, but this is a freeze, lots of freezes. And it was exactly what he said. After about 30 minutes, I would freeze up. And this is how I fixed it, right? So I'll show you where you've already seen my downloads folder, so we'll go up there. It made, when I installed it, an Elder Scrolls Online folder. Inside there, there's a user settings folder, or a live folder and a user settings file. I opened it up with gedit. I looked for this request num thread, so find request, sure, and you'll see it's right there. You'll see mine's already 0. It does default out -1 to 0. I changed that, worked, stopped the crashes. So this is how I'm using this to get around any problems I might have. Now that's specific to certain computers, so not everyone has that problem, but I did. The other thing I want you to know is this guy here. He's the same guy who linked us the certificate. He said that he got better performance here. Now he just says automatically do it, but the case is that it's not required. You can run it in DirectX mode. But he gets better performance in OpenGL mode, and in fact, I got a little bit better performance there too. So find graphics. I'm going to find graphics driver 7 OpenGL. So you can see I've already done that as well. It said D3, D9 originally, which is DirectX 9. Change that. And now we've changed all the files associated with it as well. And then you click play. Okay, so here's some gameplay. I think you can hear the audio works quite well. It might not be as loud for you as it is for me, but I'm going to go ahead and first I'll show you the music works too. And then I'm going to turn it off for the purposes of the video. Okay, so I've just logged in. You can see sun shafts are working right there. But I want to explain why I would give this game gold for me personally, because anytime you rank one of these a game or an application on Wine, the person's always ranking it for themselves. I would give it platinum because I don't really care about the work I have to put up front to get a game to run. I think it makes sense that it's going to take a little bit of time to work through some issues. I only care about the end product, how well it works. And I would say it works as well in Linux as it does in Windows. Except for one thing for me personally, for some odd reason, it resets some of my graphics options every time I load back in. So you'll see that I have a medium here for texture quality, and it doesn't give me a high option. Now, that's a pretty big deal because the medium textures are quite a bit worse, noticeably worse. But I found a workaround. I went to Wine HQ and someone else was having this problem. And I talked to some people because I have other friends that use Linux and do a lot of wine stuff. And it's probably related to either the choice of OpenGL or the choice of a 32-bit wine prefix. I don't know which, but hitting the defaults will fix it. It will set it to high, even though high wasn't an option, and you'll notice the difference probably. So you see that the textures are quite a bit better, right? Now, I have to do that at the beginning of every game. And so 20 seconds at the beginning of every game is not that big of a deal, but that is why I don't give it platinum, I give it gold instead. It doesn't have anything to do with any of the install. Other than that, the game works perfectly for me, and you'll see me turn up all of these to high. So obviously Bloom is working. You can see that it's a darkened sky, and things are a bit too bright. And so I'm going to turn it off. I actually think Bloom makes things awkwardly lit, and you'll see that sometimes characters' faces are going to be brighter than they should be. I'm going to turn on ambient occlusion. I like that. It gives a much more realistic shading. And then I'm going to turn down the gamma. So I'm in the middle of a storm. It should be dark, right? And then I'm going to turn the view distance all the way up. And I'm going to apply this. Now, I'm on a solid state hard drive, so Tesso or the Elder Scrolls Online, it loads pretty quickly for me. My friend on an older 7600 RPM drive did complain that it takes a while to load things up. That's just the game. He's on Windows after all. So if you don't like that, be prepared for it. Now, it doesn't have zones, so the game's not blocked. So you shouldn't have too many issues. With loading, it'll only happen every so often, but when it does, it might bother you. Now, so you can see sun rays. They work fine. The sun's not even out and I'm getting sun rays. Huh. You'll notice that the sun's a bit big when it is out, but hey, it's a different world. Just because it's unrealistically big doesn't mean anything, I guess. You can see the reflection of the waterfall there. Reflections, they work fine. Those are two things that sometimes don't work in wine games, but they work perfectly here. And I'll reiterate that I would definitely definitely give this a platinum if it weren't for the fact that I had switch settings at the beginning. Now let's show off the fact that I'm running Linux here. So there's multiple desktops. Hopefully no fragments occur because I'm doing this. So there's all my desktops. I am running Linux. This is under Linux. This isn't me clipping out some Windows thing. Now I'm running Kazam to render this instead of FFmpeg like I probably should. There's my Kazam open. So that's going to slow down what you view because I think it only grabs the frames every 15 FPS, maybe 20 FPS, I don't know. So that's the best it's going to show you. But I get 60 most of the time. When it's crowded in the town, and it can't get too crowded because they instance towns, I get maybe 50, maybe 40. I don't know the command to bring up the in-game FPS monitor. Usually games, especially MMOs, have one. I don't even really know how to bring up the latency monitor, which is kind of weird that it's not default out, but because I'm new to the game. This character is level 7. I think my highest character is 15. So I've not tested in-game content, but I assume it's similar to crowded cities. So here's some rays. You can see I'm running into the city now. Runs fine. There's characters all over the place. Not a big deal. And there's a lot of NPCs in town, and it has no problem rendering all those and all of their shadows. And I have shadows turned all the way up. And shadows is something else that usually slows down a rendering. Like actually in Elder Scrolls Skyrim, shadows are the issue that slows it down. I don't have that problem here. Shadows runs fine. So yeah, hopefully that informs you so you know whether or not you'd want to choose this game as something you might want to buy and test out. Now my hardware for the one I'm rendering on right now is pretty high end. It's an overclock 3770 Intel CPU, and I have NVIDIA with GTX 770 also. So it's higher end, so me being able to play on high isn't too surprising. This is Linux Mint. I've also tested this on I have a slower Antegros machine, which has, I think it's either a 9800 or a 220 NVIDIA, and it's a dual core. I don't know what speed though. So if that gives you an idea, most of the settings I can turn all the way up except for like shadows, and I don't turn on ambient occlusion, and I don't turn on water reflection quality. But I actually do keep texture quality and subsampling on high, and it seems to run. I want to turn off vertical sync. So that might give you an idea there. Hopefully some other people will list things with other specs. Now, I'm not going to make any, I'm going to leave the threads open for comments, but I won't comment on them because I do not like having to log in through my Gmail account to put comments up. So, YouTube, you're leaving a less informed public because of that. But hopefully, other people have information that they want to give you. There you go. So, have a good one. Bye bye.